Will AI speed up game development? And will it replace you entirely? I hear this question everywhere, and at some point, I decided to stop listening to other people's opinions and find out for myself. Just go ahead and build a game entirely with AI, from concept to finished product. Spoiler: no, AI still can't build anything bigger than Snake or Flappy Bird. Not without you, at least. But, and this is important, with the right iterations, it can seriously accelerate your workflow and cut the cost of things that used to take weeks and extra hires. To give you some context, here's what my games used to look like, and here's what I'm putting out now. Maybe it's not the best in the world, but for an indie dev, it's a night and day difference. Today, I'll walk you through the whole process, step by step, where AI acted like a genius, where it was a useful tool, and where it was a complete disaster that nearly had me nuking the project and going to work at McDonald's. Let's get into it. Every game starts with an idea. Usually that stage is pure creative agony. You spend hours dreaming up a concept, hunting for references, scribbling everything in a notebook, then realize 100 other devs already built that exact game. So you delete it all, close your laptop, and go to bed feeling like you're going nowhere. I've been through that enough times, so I decided not to reinvent the wheel. Make a clone. But even that has its nuances. It's not as simple as it sounds. AI became a powerful filter for me at this stage. It instantly analyzes market trends, cuts through overplayed concepts, and surfaces niches that would have taken me hours of manual research to find. Drop in a prompt. Get back a structured list. No notebooks, no going in circles. But there's a catch. AI works with data, not intuition. It doesn't feel the soul of a game. It doesn't understand the subtleties of gameplay, and it won't tell you what will actually make your project feel compelling to a real player. Someone sitting on the subway with 10 seconds to decide whether your game is worth downloading. The final call is always yours. Your experience, your feel for mechanics, your ability to tell a genuinely interesting clone from just another one. That's the filter no model can replace. AI lights the path, but the choice is yours. So, after spending some time with AI, I landed on Sled Surfers. It was looking promising on analytics platforms. I used App Magic, where you can check core app data for free. The key is to look at top grossing, because that's where real money actually flows. But if you're serious about analytics, I'd recommend Sensor Tower, much deeper data, and more detailed monetization breakdowns. After a closer analysis, I spotted another game, Epic Plane Evolution. There were already plenty of clones of it, so I decided to borrow the monetization model that worked in both Sled Surfers and Epic Plane Evolution. It's proven and converts well. For the gameplay, I went with Into Space 2, a fun game that could use a fresh coat of paint and that fit neatly into my vision. That's how the concept was born. Not from scratch, but deliberately. And crucially, grounded in market understanding rather than just a cool idea floating in a vacuum. All right, concept locked in, art style. I went with the first generated look since I'm not an artist and needed to make decisions fast, without agonizing over it endlessly. Now, code. And this is where things got interesting. I tried several different AI tools and the results were very different. Surprisingly different. ChatGPT held up reasonably well, but it's hard to get it to nail the details. It often interprets your request in its own way and runs off in its own direction. You have to constantly correct, clarify, and re-explain. Workable, but not ideal. It feels like explaining something to someone listening through a wall. Claude. At one point, this was a very capable AI, but the more recent updates have been rough. The first pass was more or less fine. I thought, okay, good, something to work with. But every subsequent edit turned into a disaster. The code bloated to 1,000 lines. Claude started duplicating methods, creating conflicts between functions, dragging old code chunks into new places where they had no business being. It generated such chaos that debugging it was harder than rewriting from scratch. I literally stared at the screen thinking, what even is this? This isn't code. It's a recipe written by someone who can't cook. One caveat though. It seems Claude performs properly with a subscription. I had one at some point and I was genuinely blown away. It was analyzing 10 files of code simultaneously, seeing connections between them and fixing bugs I'd have spent hours tracking down. So the free and paid versions are basically two different animals. Worth keeping in mind. Gemini, on the other hand, was my salvation. It has one feature that changed everything. It can analyze video. I gave it a gameplay recording of Into Space 2, just a clip, and it reproduced the flight logic, engine thrust, and acceleration physics with impressive accuracy. The AI just watched a video and produced a working base. No lengthy text explanations. No, could you clarify what you mean? Just watch, understand, write. And one more thing that genuinely surprised me. Gemini is excellent at animations via Dotween. I asked it to build game feel for a few UI elements and buttons, and it produced such smooth, satisfying animations that I just sat there staring at the screen. Something that used to take me an hour of manually tweaking parameters, it knocked out in a minute. Game feel is its own topic entirely. Highly recommend trying it. But, and this is critical, remember this, no AI will architect your codebase properly on its own. Over time, you'll keep tripping over bigger and bigger problems, and each fix will cost more than the last. If you ask AI to write an entire game in a single file, it will collapse under the weight of its own bugs. That's not theory. I tested it personally, on my own nerves. So I took architecture into my own hands. Rocket data and stats. I moved into a separate data file. This makes it easy to tweak balance without touching code. Want to increase engine thrust? Open the config file, change the number, done. No diving into logic. Pure movement physics went into a movement control script as a subclass of character control. It handles movement and nothing else. Core systems initialize in the first scene. In the next, we initialize everything needed for the menu. Gameplay logic lives in the gameplay manager. Save data goes into a separate system that encrypts it. UI and audio each have their own isolated systems. No direct dependencies, no spaghetti code. AI only wrote small, isolated pieces according to my explicit plan. A specific task, a specific output. I played the role of a strict tech lead who gives no creative freedom and only wants exactly what was asked for. That's the only way the codebase stayed alive and manageable. My takeaway on programming: Gemini for understanding logic through video, and for animations, top tier. ChatGPT for simple tasks, decent. Claude without a subscription for iterative edits in a large project, avoid it or tread very carefully. And most importantly, always design the architecture yourself before asking AI to write anything. That's non-negotiable. On to graphics, I use ChatGPT and Gemini. Both give decent results, but with caveats. ChatGPT can generate PNGs without a background right out of the gate. Convenient, no manual background removal in Photoshop. But Photoshop is still unavoidable. Edge quality and fine detail always need manual cleanup. Artifacts, blurry edges, weird pixels along the outline. All of that needs fixing. Individual objects, icons, items, boosters, upgrade components. This is where AI has no equal. I needed dozens of unique icons for an upgrade system. Different engines, fuel tanks, boosters, enemies. Each with its own character, but within a unified visual language. AI churned out hundreds of variants in the right style in a matter of hours. I just picked the best ones, cleaned them up in Photoshop, and dropped them into the game. It genuinely saved weeks of work, what used to require a full-time artist or more. And a special mention for thumbnails and logos. Honestly, a lifesaver. Before, developing a proper logo took weeks. Brief the designer, rounds of revisions, still not right. Now, describe the style, feed it to AI, and within an hour, you have dozens of options. Sometimes there's friction around communicating exactly what you need, but a well-crafted prompt solves that. Production time drops dramatically. I also want to talk about animation for 2D art. I discovered GameLab Studio, a service that breathes life into static 2D images, turning them into animated characters and objects. The results look genuinely impressive, especially when you consider how much time and money hiring an animator used to cost. With seamless backgrounds, though, I ran straight into a wall. AI simply cannot generate a perfect seamless background for levels. The problem is that these need to tile. The right edge has to line up perfectly with the left. The seams constantly showed visible joints, color, or brightness mismatches. It looked amateur and undercut the whole experience, even when everything else was done well. For the horizontal scroll, I had to bring in an actual artist to fix the background by hand, an expense I hadn't planned for, but without it, there was no acceptable result. For the vertical spaceflight, I solved it with code. I wrote a shader that smoothly tiles the texture and creates the illusion of ascending into space. It looks great and doesn't need a perfectly seamless image. Sometimes a technical solution is cheaper than an artistic one. Now for UI/UX. And here the failure was bigger than I expected. AI produces a nice-looking mock-up. You look at the screenshot. Sure, looks fine. But it has absolutely no understanding of how buttons need to scale across different phone screens. It doesn't account for safe areas. thumb zones where a button needs to be large enough and placed so it can be tapped one-handed. It doesn't build a logical player path through menus. It doesn't think about how an ad banner, buttons, and a progress bar might all be on screen at once, and all need to fit without chaos or overlap. The model thinks in images, not in user experience. The result looks good in a mock-up and falls apart completely in an actual game on an actual phone. So I built and adapted all the UI myself. This is one area where AI genuinely doesn't help yet. It just tosses out pretty ideas that then need to be completely rebuilt from scratch. The graphics summary is simple: individual objects, icons, and logos. Absolute top tier, weeks of savings, use without hesitation. Backgrounds and UI, proceed with caution, budget time for polish, and don't expect AI to close the loop on its own. On audio, the answer is short. Don't try to generate every sound one by one through AI. I tried. It eats up way too much time. Hunting for the right prompt. Generating, listening, nope, not right. Generating again, still not right, one more time. And on for every tiny button click or footstep. Ready-made free or cheap indie packs cover 90% of basic needs in one click. Just grab a good pack and don't overthink it. By the way, if your game needs tutorials, voice hints, or narration for a promo video, there's 11 Labs. It generates realistic voices that are genuinely hard to distinguish from a live actor. Different intonations, different languages, different pacing. My project didn't need voice acting, but if you're building a story game or a detailed interactive tutorial, it's a must-have. Add it to your toolkit now. Don't wait. There are two specific sounds, though, where AI failed me completely, and I had to go to a real person. The first was the reward chest opening sound. AI has no way of seeing how the chest animation looks, so it can't produce audio that actually feels right. That satisfying, punchy sound at exactly the right moment. AI can't nail that. It takes a human hand and a human ear. The second was a seamless rocket engine loop. It needs to be an infinite loop that smoothly shifts in pitch as the rocket accelerates. Same seamless loop problem again. AI introduced microgaps at the splice points, and your brain hears them even when you're not consciously aware of it. One more thing I want to address separately: game balance. This is something AI fundamentally cannot do for you. It can't play the game. It can't feel whether something is fun or boring, too easy or too demanding. At best, it can help you build a progression curve using a mathematical formula. But playtesting is on you alone. Sit down, play. Notice where the player gets bored, where they get frustrated, where they want more, then tune it. That part doesn't automate. So, the final verdict? The game is built, it works. And it's fun to play, which for me is the only metric that matters. Not technical perfection, not flawless code, but that feeling. Pick up your phone, launch it, and want one more run. AI genuinely freed me from a massive chunk of monotonous grind. Basic scripts, hundreds of icons, market research, idea exploration. All of that used to take months, requiring multiple specialists or a serious budget. Now it comes together over a handful of evenings. One person, one room. That's not an exaggeration. It's what I felt firsthand over the course of this project. But this experiment also made several things undeniably clear. Things worth knowing before you start. Without my programming experience, the code from Claude would have become an unreadable mess that no one could maintain past the first week. Without understanding architecture, the project would have collapsed around week 3 under the weight of its own technical debt. Without bringing in a real person for the horizontal background and the engine audio, the game would have felt rough and unfinished, even if everything technically worked and didn't crash. AI will not replace a developer. I'll say that again, because it's the most important takeaway. AI is a super assistant, a reactive brush in your hands, a tool that amplifies your capabilities, but only if those capabilities are already there. It will only replace the people who never wanted to think for themselves anyway. If you don't have foundational skills, AI won't build your understanding for you. It'll just lead you into a dead end faster. For the indie scene right now, this is a golden age. The barrier to entry is lower than it's ever been. If you have an idea, a vision, and at least basic skills, AI will help you build it right from your bedroom, without a big studio budget, and without a 10-person team. But the idea and the vision are still yours, and so is the responsibility for the result. What do you think about AI in game development? Have you tried coding or creating art with it? Share your experience in the comments. I'm genuinely curious to read it, especially if you've had similar adventures with Claude. Like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos.